stereotype of men at work. Different strokes for different folks, sailing the same water but sitting in different boats. You're breaking, baby, you look confused. I'm breaking too, electric boogaloo. You're still hanging out with Cheryl and them? We probably been hanging too.
I'm sorry, that was weak. That was weak. The thing about breaking two, I'm sorry. I don't know if I have the cultural right to say how weak that was. That was weak.
WRFL Lexington, in accordance with federal law and FCC regulations, confines the broadcasting of indecent material to between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Sensitive listeners and children are advised to tune out during these times. Remember, you can call the on-air DJ at 257-WRFL for concerns, comments, and even just a chat. WRFL Lexington, your only alternative left.
Hello there, that was the Gonks with their instrumental song, I'm Dead. Before that was Will Sampson with Triplet off of his album Paralanguage. It was sort of precious, but it was alright. Then, before that was Wolf Parade with Forest Green off of Thin Mind, and I will listen to every single song on that Wolf Parade album until I find a good one, because they used to be the best band in the darn world. Before that was Atmosphere with Dearly Beloved, which I'm afraid was cut off in the middle by an unfortunate accident. And before that was a song I really enjoyed by Dan Deacon called Become a Mountain. And now that we have played the 5 songs that we promised to play, you know, they want us to play 5 songs from the station's box every week, our actual show begins.
There's no doubt about it. If you live within a few miles of where one of these bombs strike, you'll die instantly.
So, hello, and welcome to another episode of Radio Free Eskippakithiki.
We're to explore Uranus.
Dang it,
That's
I
why
practiced
we're here.
saying that word all the way here. Yeah, it's still playing Manor Astronaut. So yeah, welcome to another episode of Radio Free Eskippakithiki. Eskippakithiki? I'm so good at saying it. Anyway, so for those of you who are listening, our telephone number is 859-257-WRFL, and you're always welcome to call in, and we would like to announce a small contest that I came up with, this is a multiple choice test. And whoever gets it right gets a free drawing by me who is pretty good at drawing. Okay, and it can be of anything you want, or it can be of something I have around. Okay, so, Eskippakithiki. Hold on, I've got it written right here. Eskippakithiki, the Native American trading post that Kentucky is theoretically named after, the very first settlement that was found in this state, was founded by what Native American tribe? A is the Shawnee, B is the Comanche, C is the Cherokee, D is the Wyandot, and E is the Delaware. So go ahead and call in or email us or whatever you want to do whenever you happen to listen to this, because the vast majority of our listeners are not awake at 5 a.m. on a Tuesday. They're listening to this on YouTube or whatever later. So anyway, contact us anytime you want to, and we will tell you all about it. So, Geoff, do you have any interesting news for us today from the world outside?
Well, we're still facing the possibility of an accidental nuclear war that could happen at any time. There have been several false alarms in the past where, for example, Soviet or Russian radar picks up what they think might be a full-scale nuclear attack coming over the North Pole.
Mm-hmm. But it was a flock of geese or something?
A flock of geese or technical malfunction. There was one case where a U.S. false alarm happened when somebody loaded in a training disc instead of looking at the actual situation.
That's grim.
Right. So, ever since, let's say, 1953, the possibility of a nuclear war has been imminent or more or less likely.
Far too close.
Far too close for comfort. That's my cheerful news of the morning.
Yeah, I had this theory when I don't really know what happens with the Ukrainian jet that just got shot down in Iran, but I figured that's what happened with it, was everybody there was on such high alert.
Yeah.
And so nervous all the time, because when you put people under stress, they tend to press the buttons in front of them.
I think that's a big part of the cause of that airline disaster.
So there's a few things that happened in Kentucky this week that I'd like to talk about. The first is that I talked to Al Cross, the reporter.
Yeah.
And I asked him...
Legendary.
Yeah, it turns out he's a real interesting guy. Anyway, he said, I asked him when the last time Kentucky had a relevant presidential primary, when it mattered who we voted for president.
Okay.
And, in the primary. And it turns out it was in 1976, when when Ronald Reagan was running to unseat Gerald Ford in the 1976 Republican primary. And it was a tight race all the way up to the end. And Kentucky and Arkansas apparently vote right at the same time. And Ronald Reagan was given some sort of trick question about tobacco that he flubbed. And it caused him to lose about 5,000 votes in Kentucky. And Kentucky went for Gerald Ford something like 50.9% to 49.3%. I mean, just an absolute razor-thin margin, and that broke his momentum. And that was the last time that Kentucky affected the presidential primary race.
Interesting.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot, just because it fits into the mystery of Kentucky for me. Like, what it is about this weird place. From my point of view, I think Kentucky did the right thing. Because Jimmy Carter was very vulnerable to Ronald Reagan, as we found out 4 years later. And if Jimmy Carter had come up against Ronald Reagan in 1976...
he might not have won.
Well, there's no way to... one of the things that I found out when I was reading about this is that Ronald Reagan's dirty tricks squad came from his 1976 loss. James D. Baker was, who, if you're old like us, you might remember the name. James D. Baker was Gerald Ford's campaign manager. First, he was George Bush's campaign manager. Then when George Bush dropped out in the 1976 primary, he went over to Gerald Ford.
Okay.
And then after, in 1980, he switched over to Ronald Reagan's team. And apparently, James Baker was the king of old school politicking. Apparently, he was one of the people that really pushed Reagan over the top. Yeah. Wasn't he one of the architects of Iran-Contra, too?
Don't quite remember, but probably yes.
I shouldn't have sprung this on you. I should have given you a chance to research it first. But,
probably right.
So, maybe by handing the primary to Gerald Ford, in a weird way, Kentucky handed the election to Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter is, I'm personally biased, but I think Jimmy Carter is like the most positive presidency of our lifetime, even though he made mistakes, and I'll happily call out his mistakes.
I agree. Well, let's say just a couple words about what Iran-Contra was. Basically, Iran and Iraq were in a bitter, deadly war with each other, against each other. And the United States was supporting Iraq, Saddam Hussein, at that time. This was the 1980s. And the United States empire also wanted to make sure that a socialist government would never come to power in Nicaragua. So Oliver North was the director of this Iran-Contra thing
Yeah, this is where he came from.
for President
Yeah.
Reagan. And what he did was he and the CIA got drugs smuggled out of Central America, maybe Colombian cocaine, flown in planes, landed in or near L.A., and we were selling drugs in the U.S. government. The CIA was profiting from that, and they were also selling weapons to Iran.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Contras were the terrorist army in Central America that the United States was supporting.
And they were nightmares, right? They were like raping nuns.
Terrorists.
And stuff. Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. That was a huge
Right.
scandal.
Right. Yeah, so it worked both ways for the purposes of the empire. They were getting all this money from the Contras, or
Yeah.
for the Contras, in order to fund them so they could murder more people. And
they were liberally salting American cities with crack cocaine, which was really good for putting people in jail. Because
Yeah.
a huge part of Reagan's policies were the war on drugs
Right.
and the criminalization of drug use.
right, yeah, so prison population in this country went way up.
Skyrocketed.
Iran got some weapons to fight our ally, Saddam Hussein, who was a monster.
Yeah. It seems like we should mention how this ties into around here, right?
Sure.
Okay. Well, not all the drugs that the CIA started by bringing in heroin in coffins from Vietnam.
Okay.
That was the end of the Vietnam War, or a large part of the Vietnam War. And then whoever was doing it, and I don't think, it's silly to speculate exactly who, because nobody really knows.
Well,
what
CIA
position they held.
was
somebody, yeah.
just, that's the general blanket.
Well, but people who ever worked with the CIA are always distrusted again. You never know. I mean, because you can never say whether they were doing something just on their own, whether they were on the clock or off the clock. That's why I don't know if you know, but if you have ever done anything with military intelligence, or anybody in your family has ever done anything with military intelligence, you are never ever allowed to join the Peace Corps, ever.
Okay.
Yep, they are that serious about staying untainted. Which, by the way, I got to read this PSA real fast. This is 88.1 WRFL all the way to the left. And did you know that UK's Big Blue Pantry serves UK students facing hunger or food insecurity? Any UK student with a valid ID is eligible to receive non-perishable goods from this pantry. The pantry also welcomes donations from the community and is open 5 days a week. They are located in the basement of Whitehall Classroom Building next to the post office. For more information on donations, hours, and how to get involved, visit ukcco.org/Big Blue Pantry or email bigbluepantry@gmail.com. So anyway, back to Kentucky in the 80s. So what they were doing, they started into cocaine, and this is very late 70s, very early 80s that this was happening, and they moved the cocaine through Mena, Arkansas, where the story gets sort of, yeah, I see you smiling. The story does tie in with somebody who happened to be Attorney General of Arkansas that time, as a lot of people have tried to tell the world over the years. But anyway, the cocaine started in Mena, Arkansas, landed in Mena, Arkansas, and then came up here to Lexington, where it was consumed through the horse industry. Because the horse industry, between rich socialites and jockeys who needed to keep their weight down, the horse industry had a nearly endless appetite for cocaine.
Wow.
And this led to things like the Bluegrass Conspiracy, which you may have heard of, where that young lady was murdered and her body was dumped in the quarry down on the Kentucky River, where they're never going to find it. And the Cocaine Bear, if you ever heard of Cocaine Bear, this is where Cocaine Bear came from, where the crazy, what's his name, John Thornton III, the crazy CIA agent.
Somebody Thornton.
Yeah, jumped out of an airplane in Tennessee with a bunch of cocaine and a parachute that didn't work.
Yeah.
And then he landed on the ground, and a bear ate the cocaine and had a heart attack and died after, I assume, a very pleasant afternoon. And that very bear, that died of the CIA cocaine overdose, is today in Lexington, and you can go see it today. It's right up on Bryan Street in that Kentucky store, that Kentuckiana store. You know, the one with the picture of Harry Dean Stanton on it?
Yeah, what, Kentucky for Kentucky? Something?
Yeah, they
Okay.
have literally Cocaine Bear stuffed in there. Cocaine Bear is there.
Right.
The most famous...
Minus all the contents.
I assume. I mean, yeah, considering what people do for drugs, yeah, probably somebody ground up and snorted the inside of that bear a long time ago. And also, it's worth mentioning, Pablo Escobar. Everybody's like, this stuff is so crazy. Pablo Escobar's warehouse is right here in downtown Lexington, and you've seen it. If you've ever been to 3rd Street Stuff, when you walk out of 3rd Street Stuff coffee shop and you see that building right across the way with a beautiful mural on it and a big flat blank wall, that was Pablo Escobar's house. That's where he lived.
Fill in a detail of who he is.
Pablo Escobar was a gosh, other people know this part of the story. If Marshall White's listening, he knows this story much better. He watched the series. Pablo Escobar was a South American drug lord who was a big part of this, and he would come up to Lexington to party and watch his cocaine transfers.
Yeah.
And that he lived in that house. And the reason why that building has this big blank wall is if you go inside there is an Olympic swimming pool that's been filled in. But he liked to swim. So he built an Olympic swimming pool on 3rd Street in downtown Lexington, because that's how rich he was and that's how often he was here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think he was Colombian.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I don't want to mix up Colombia and Ecuador if I don't have to. I'm not very good at that. But anyway, so that's how the crazy story of CIA drug transfer actually goes right through Lexington, Kentucky. And talk to the old folks. They mostly know about it.
It's a final note that the CIA has been involved in illegal dealing and running of addictive drugs since it was founded in 1948 or 47.
That's probably fair. Why do you say that?
Well, they first worked with the Corsican Mafia in Southern Europe to, I guess the deal was they would allow them to pursue their drug business if the Mafia would help them defeat leftists in Europe, Italy, France.
Oh, Operation Gladio and all that. So, well, that makes a lot of sense.
So the CIA has been heavily into illegal drugs since it was founded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your tax dollars at work. I mean, I'm not a fan. The very first political candidate I ever worked for was a strongly anti-CIA guy called Robert Torricelli. He was running for Senate in New Jersey in 1996, I want to say. Anyway, and he ran and he won because he was a millionaire.
That helps.
Coincidence that. Yeah, it definitely helped. He was a millionaire, so he got to be senator for one term. And he started trying to rein the CIA in, and all of a sudden all these weird embezzlement scandals started cropping up against him, and he had to resign. And now he's a lobbyist for a fairly dire Iranian group, who you'd recognize if I told you their name. I'll look it up in between.
Is it MEK?
Yeah, MEK. He's the lobbyist for MEK.
They're basically a cult. I think they're Iranians by ethnicity.
Yeah.
But they have spent decades committing terrorist acts in Iran. They allied with Saddam Hussein during the 8-year Iran-Iraq war.
Really?
So, the MEK is dangerous, bad business.
So how did Robert Torricelli, the Edgewood Cliffs software magnate, end up working with them as their primary lobbyist? What a world. Anyway, should we move to Kentucky?
Sure.
Okay, so I wanted to read a newspaper article today. Okay, 2 pending bills. This is from our friends at the Lexington Herald Leader, who deign to report on Kentucky news every once in a while when they're distracted from the impeachment. Faced with dangerously overcrowded county jails across Kentucky, many of which house state inmates serving felony time, that's felony convicts in county jails, 2 lawmakers are sponsoring bills in the General Assembly that would make it easier to transfer prisoners to jails with open beds. That would not solve the problem of felons in county jails, by the way. It would just move them to smaller counties. And to give larger state payments to jails that offer rehabilitation programs and more rigorous standards, which is a SOP. That's, they just want to budget more to keep more people in jail. More rigorous standards does not get people out of jail. Nearly half of Kentucky's 23,151 state inmates are serving their sentences in county jails, not in state prisons, alongside 11,600 local inmates. Again, that is 2 state inmates for every local inmate. Oh no, but to be precise, in the whole state. But there's, in any given county jail, you're going to have about as many local inmates as you will state inmates. They have no place to put the state prisoners, so they're salting them away in all these little county jails because Kentucky, for all its virtues, has 120 counties, which means a lot of redundancy and a lot of little county jails, I suppose. Some jails hold twice as many people as they're supposed to, with prisoners sleeping on concrete floors and in hallways and converted recreation rooms. Violence, filth, and other problems occur as a result, and I would say as a completely unavoidable result.
Yeah, and predictable.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 4 people in the room meant for 2. And the only reason that this can work is that they know these felons are not violent. They know. There's no way you could stack people like this if you didn't have a solid baseline of inoffensive, nonviolent prisoners. There's no way you could if you had this many murderers. And you don't. All these people are not in there for anything most of us would consider serious crimes. It's a huge... Okay, so here's Deanna Frazier, the representative from Richmond, saying, "It's a huge, complex issue, so taking these little bites from the apple hopefully will start to alleviate the problem." Obviously, Deanna Frazier of Richmond is going to be very interested in this because, stopping the article for a second, Madison County is in the process of collapsing because their jail is costing them so much money, because their jail has been such a humanitarian blight for so long, and so many courts have told them that they had to get people out and they had to reduce overcrowding, that they finally did have to. And not only have they distributed as many prisoners as they can all over the state, but they also tried to jack everybody's property taxes in all of Madison County 10% last year, which infuriated the citizens so much that they had a referendum and they forced them to put it on the ballot. And once the county commissioners realized it would have to be on the ballot, they quickly dropped the idea and instead punted by hiding prisoners in everybody else's jails and putting the rest on the insurance company, where it's going to come back and bite the poorest people who can't afford to pay it. So obviously she wants to do something about this. But her plan... Oh, here, I'll tell you what her plan is. Before I'll tell you what the paper says. The Madison County Detention Center in Frazier's House District was overcrowded at 190% of capacity last week. That's down. That's substantially down from where it's been for, if you're listening to this right now, your entire life. That's the lowest it's been since you were born. 190% capacity, 184 beds, and 350 inmates. Do you know what happens to inmates who don't have beds?
Well, they sleep on the floor.
They sleep on the floor, next to the toilet. However, not far away in Laurel County, the newly opened $25 million jail in Laurel County, which is, not far away if you're handcuffed to a bus and somebody's driving you there. 664 beds in Laurel County. If you've ever been to Laurel County, that is more than their entire county's hotel capacity.
Okay.
By far. To put it in context, Clark County, which is much bigger than Laurel County, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll check on this because I hate being wrong. Clark County has 365 hotel beds in the entire county. So Laurel County has space for 664 prisoners and only 147 vacancies. Guess how many of those people are from Laurel County? If anybody wants to guess on that one too, you will also win a prize. I'm betting not more than 150. 664, 147 vacancies, that's 500 people. I'm betting not more than 150 actually from Laurel County. I bet you they're just dumping prisoners wildly. Another new jail in the region, because this is what we're spending our money on, this is why our economy is so great, reported 66 vacancies. Has anybody thought that maybe we wouldn't be one of the poorest states in the nation if we stopped putting so many people in jail?
Well, especially nonviolent offenders.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, the only reason this system works is because they have so many nonviolent offenders. If these people were violent, if they were dangerous,
you couldn't put them in a county jail.
Yeah, definitely not 6 people in a 2-person room. No, there's no way.
There would be bad problems.
Yeah. The fact that these people are surviving in there And that so many of them are in there for drugs that they did while they were in prison is a pretty good sign that this isn't working. We can talk about rehabilitation versus keeping society safe. We're doing neither. This is not accomplishing either. Frazier's House Bill 361 would allow the Kentucky Department of Corrections to transfer state prisoners out of county jails that have reached 150% capacity. Oh, how nice. So that what she says is like, well, we need to change the law so that we can hide the prisoners from Madison County even faster. It would fix it. The state's per diem, its daily payment in the county jail for holding a state inmate, would go along with prisoners to the new facility.
So, yeah, it's all about money.
Yeah, but not very much money. We're
Right.
talking $22, $66 a day for these people. Like, not very much of these little counties are making off of this. Now, I mean, if you're in Laurel or Knox County, it seems like free money to you. Because as far as you're concerned, these are all, drunk drivers from Madison County. You couldn't care less. You take your $66 and you let them live on Raisin Bran and expired milk. But it's not a good idea because this is Kentucky and we're all in it together. Our jail in Madison is constantly over capacity, said Representative Frazier, as are about 20 others, while some jails have excess beds. Ms. Frazier, this is a bad solution.
Well, it's a Band-Aid.
It's not even a Band-Aid. It's literally sweeping people under the rug.
Okay.
I mean, because these people in Madison County, they don't disappear. I'm sorry I get upset about this, but these people in Madison County don't disappear or cease to be Kentuckians because they're transferred to a secure facility in Knox County. I mean, sticking these people in a... I mean, these facilities can't even figure out if they're minimum or maximum security. They have no idea what they're supposed to do because you're the regionally elected jailer in Knox County, and you're dealing with state inmates from all over the place that you've never heard of. That you have no idea who they are, what they're for. Anyway, okay, so this Frazier says this: we need to be humane in how our prisoners are treated. Just imagine if you were in that sort of situation, living in the stress of living like that. Do you agree with her there? The second proposal is Senate Bill 128, which would increase the state's basic $31.34 per diem for jails for the first time since 2008 if the jails could meet certain goals. That's a Band-Aid.
Okay.
For example, improving their staff and facility Oh, God. They want them to have a field day and win trophies in order to increase their per diem so that the prisoners can eat.
Literal field day.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, they want staff and facility to gain accreditation by various professional organizations and legal reviews, which would allow them to enter contract negotiations and request a higher per diem. Request the much higher per diem that the state pays to private for-profit prison. Core Civic. Oh, I had missed this part. Core Civic, the private prison, gets $64.09 for every prisoner for every day in its prison that it lets the state use in Lee County. That's so nice of them. The jails have been asking, can't you pay us more? Can't you pay us more what you pay the private prisons? And we're saying, okay, but the private prisons are accredited.
I have to put that in quotes. Accredited.
Accredited. So if you can do that, we'll pay you more too, said Senator Jenny Higdon, our Lebanon, the bill's sponsor. Mr. Higdon, this is a really bad... I would like to apologize to Ms. Frazier. Your bill looks much better all of a sudden. There are probably 10 jails in the state that could meet these criteria right off the bat, and a few more that could follow shortly behind. If you don't pay them the per diem, the prisoners don't eat.
That's right.
People don't eat less because they're in a jail that's not accredited.
Right.
This is Orwellian? Kafkaesque? Is it okay to call things Kafkaesque?
Sure.
I always feel it's weird with my, being married into the family. Also, jails that offer approved rehabilitation programs such as education, job training, and addiction treatment for people that are addicted to drugs that they got in the jail will get $2 to $10 per day for their per diem.
Not the prisoners getting...
No.
No, the jail gets it.
Yeah, the jail gets it. depending on whether the instructors had relevant college degrees. This is some post-capitalist crap right here. Like, many jails presently offer little to nothing in the way of quality rehabilitation programs, even for state inmates who might be in there for years.
Right.
Right now, we've basically incentivized the jails to get by as cheaply as they can, Higdon said.
Well, there's there's a U.S. Constitution that says something about cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. Well,
So Kentucky could be sued.
And it is. We are being sued. We're in court cases left and right. And I actually have I had 2 articles that I wanted to read today, and the other one leads directly into that. But I don't want to hog all the time. Did you have anything you wanted to read, or are you ready to sing your song?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So this song is from 1962. Written by Bob Dylan. It sure hasn't charted in the last half century. And he wrote it before the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was a big nuclear standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. In interviews, he said, this song really isn't about nuclear Armageddon. It's he just wrote it because of the mood or the events going on in the country in 1962. And then in October, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's called "The Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall." I'm gonna sing it a cappella. Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son? And where have you been, my darling young one? I've stumbled on the side of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I've crawled on 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. And it's a hard rains are gonna fall. Oh, what did you see, my blue-eyed son? And what did you see, my darling young one? I saw a newborn baby with wild wolves all around it. I saw a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a room full of men with their hammers a-bleeding. I saw a white ladder all covered with water. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard rains are gonna fall. And what did you hear, my blue-eyed son? And what did you hear, my darling young one? I heard the sound of a thunder that roared out a warning. I heard the roar of a wave that could drown the whole world. I heard 100 drummers whose hands were a-blazing. I heard 10,000 whispering and nobody listening. I heard one person starve, I heard many people laughing. Heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. I heard the sound of a clown who cried in the alley. And it's a hard It's a hard rain's gonna fall. Oh, and who did you meet, my blue-eyed son? And who did you meet, my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a white man who walked a black dog. I met a young woman whose body was burning. I met a young girl, she gave me a rainbow. I met one man who was wounded in love. I met another man who was wounded in hatred. It's a hard rain's gonna fall. Oh, what'll you do now, my blue-eyed son? Oh, what'll you do now, my darling young one? I'm going back out, for the rain starts a-falling. I'll walk to the depths of the deepest black forest, where the people are many and their hands are all empty, where the pellets of poison are flooding their waters, where the home in the valley meets the damp, dirty prison, where the executioner's face is always well hidden, where hunger is ugly, where souls are forgotten, where black is the color, where none is the number. And I'll tell it and think it and speak it and breathe it and reflect it from the mountain so all souls can see it. Then I'll stand on the ocean until I start sinking, but I'll know my song well before I start singing. And it's a hard rain's gonna fall.
Thank you. I didn't know you were that good of a singer.
Thanks.
No, I thank you very much. Well, let's play a promo real fast to break it up, and then we'll continue reading the news.
Boss, I got the big scoop.
Yeah, why is it?
I got the skinny on them podcasts you was asking about.
Tell me more.
WRFL Lexington has all of their podcasts online at WRFL.FM.
Really?
Yeah, but it goes deeper. All the talk shows are available for streaming, or you can subscribe on podcasting services like iTunes or Google Play.
Great work, Jones. Get it on the front page tomorrow. Everyone needs to know about WRFL's family of podcasts at WRFL.FM.
Yeah, you can actually hear the show on, I think it's called Radio Free America, where they archive the last two, and then we've been putting them up on YouTube, but with the music removed. Although that hasn't really been an issue in this episode, but in the other ones. All right, well, anyway, here's one more promo, and then we'll go back to the news.
Support for WRFL is brought to you in part by the UK Singletary Centre for the Arts. In the spring of 2020, the Singletary Centre presents Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Bluegrass Band, guitarist Raul Madan, and the American Spiritual Ensemble performing the music of Duke Ellington. Located at 405 Rose Street, tickets and more information are available at singletarycentre.com. WRFL thanks the Singletary Centre for supporting college radio.
All right, we're back again. That was a promo from the Singletary Center, who I believe helped fund this wonderful station. So the telephone number here is still 859-257-WRFL, as it has been for 20-odd years, 30 years. I have been calling this radio station since 1988. When I lived in Austin, I would just randomly call RFL and say, hey, you're playing a good show. I had never had any idea who I was talking to or if the show was good. But they never asked me any further questions. So. Anyway, so there's a certain difference of opinion in this room over our governor, Mr. Beshear. My esteemed colleague does not share my affection for the man, but that's because he's directly hurt you in your life, and I went to GSP, and so did he, so there's a certain amount of hometown pride. So anyway,
Governor's Scholars Program.
Yeah, he and I both, he went to GSP with my little brother, and I actually met him, and I've, so just some random dude that I met playing soccer when I was 17, and now he's governor. Sort of weird. Anyway, I got nothing against the guy. He's a little bit scared of me because I'm always hanging out with you, but we're cool. He kept my campaign promises for me. I appreciate that. Governor Andy Beshear, to finish off the last article, recently said that Kentucky expects to pay $115.3 million in additional prison costs just to finish the current fiscal year and to make it through the next 2-year budget. I'd like to tell you that if Kentucky was its own nation, we would have apparently the third highest incarceration rate of women in the world.
Wow.
Kentucky incarceration is completely out of control. Everybody's working on it. Everybody's trying to do something. To bring it back to Clark County and the Clark County Detention Center, which is a huge part of this problem. As they kept saying, there's about 20 prisons in Kentucky that are huge problems. Madison County is one of them. Clark County is one of them. And here's a story about Clark County. The Kentucky Court of Appeals on this Friday, just a few days ago, upheld a lower court's ruling allowing Kentucky jailers to take booking fees and daily charges from inmates and keep the money even if the person is not found guilty.
Well, that's punishment without guilt.
Yeah. The 2-to-1 panel ruling goes directly against the intent of the law passed in 2000, meant to let a judge decide once a case ended if a person could afford to pay jail fees and how much is owed, if anything, according to a WDRB news analysis of the legislation. So this...
well, is that going to be appealed to the Kentucky Supreme Court?
Oh, yes.
Is it? Okay.
Oh, yes, already. It's already being...
It doesn't... I mean, I don't know any details, but... It doesn't sound like a good decision by the Court of Appeals.
Apparently it's a fairly bad one, and the dissenting judge, Sarah Combs, who is from Powell County, and is apparently very much beloved out there. And I heard a story that I don't know if I should share because it's technically gossip, but apparently she is more beloved than certain other people in the Kentucky Democratic Party who were very cruel to her, apparently. So anyway, we have it on highest authority from our sources in Powell County that Sarah Combs is a very popular judge, and one of the things we're going to really have to explore over the course of this show is what it means to live in a state with elected judges. Because judges, we live in a state where literally every official is elected, from the Soil and Water Conservation Board all the way up to the constable. And one of the main things that's elected in this state are judges, and that is the election that nobody pays attention to. And it's led to a really weird crop of judges, most of whom don't seem to care that much about the law. But Sarah Combs wrote that the way the law is currently being followed is unconstitutional in her dissent, and implored the Kentucky Supreme Court or General Assembly to rectify this glaringly unjust state of affairs. And that's a direct quote from her.
That is a very strong dissent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how can the General Assembly help when they've already passed a law that's directly opposed to this?
They could change their mind.
But they already made up their mind, and the judges just ignored it.
Yeah, the other judges.
Yeah.
Right, but so, first of all, dissenting opinions in Kentucky are rare.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was 2-to-1 and this strongly worded dissent, which, appears to make sense on constitutional grounds, that's a really interesting situation.
The other two members of the 3-member panel, Judges Jeff Taylor, Jeff Taylor, just to be clear, and Allison Jones, that's 2 L's in the Allison, by the way, ruled that under the law, jailers are allowed to take money from prisoners, meaning anyone charged with a crime and taken to jail. And the jailer's ability to bill and collect unpaid fees is not contingent upon an order from a sentencing court, Taylor wrote in an opinion for the majority. the majority. In this case, the majority is 2-1. It's not much of a majority.
That's right.
Rather, this authority exists by statute independent of the court. The issue is likely headed to state Supreme Court. Now, as I understand it, this is old news. This is Friday, and now it's Tuesday. It's already on the way. Our friend Chris Wiest is apparently very interested in this case. The libertarian lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never met him in person, but
I'd like to
talk to him on the phone. Interesting lawyer.
Yeah, I had the libertarian lawyers are my heroes. They've been doing amazing things across the state. The libertarian lawyers we shouldn't delve too much into the Bernie Sanders campaign, but the libertarians did Bernie Sanders a solid. I don't think anybody's put 2 and 2 together on that one yet. Okay, but anyway, this case, the case of whether or not they're allowed to charge somebody jail fees when they are innocent and arrested and imprisoned for no reason because
it
they're
could
innocent.
have been a false arrest.
In this case, there's a lot of people that seem to end up in the Clark County's detention center because of typos, including, if you follow WWF, apparently Al Snow, the wrestler from WWF, ended up in Clark County jail because of a typo. But this case centers on the 2013 arrest of David Jones in Clark County. Jones was jailed for 14 months in the Clark County Detention Center. This is one of the 20 centers that they're talking about. That's at 150, 190% capacity with people sleeping on the floor. 14 months as he awaited trial, paying an initial $35 booking fee and then $10 a day, which I guess goes towards his per diem. While he paid more than $250 out of pocket, the jail then billed him about $4,000 for his stay after the charges were dismissed. Now, if this guy stayed in jail for 14 months waiting for trial, it's a pretty good bet that he couldn't afford his bail.
Right.
So putting $4,000 on top of that, and
it's like a debtor's prison.
Yeah.
He's going to be in debt for life, probably. I don't know how old he is.
Well, court fees, if you don't pay court fees, you can go right back to jail.
Yeah.
This guy's got to come up with the $4,000. So the lawsuit went to appellate court, which is where this strange and dissented opinion happened. So Combs wrote that the ramifications of the law are, quote, numerous and ponderous, which is a classy phrase. I'm going to say that again. Numerous and ponderous. A person unjustly jailed upon his release can look forward to becoming an instant debtor through no fault of his own. I mean, yeah, this really adds a $4,000 price tag to the nightmare of being falsely accused and jailed for a crime you didn't commit and were found innocent of. The other 2 judges noted that they were following precedent from previous rulings in the state upholding the jail fee law and the way jailers use it, rebuffing dissent attorneys, inmates advocates, and even the legislator who wrote the law. Wow.
So, there's not much question about the intent of the legislature.
No! It's not.
So I'm interested in these 2 lousy judges.
Yeah, it's not like you need a Ouija board to contact Thomas Jefferson for that one. The guy that wrote the law is standing right in front of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why are these 2 lousy judges still on the Court of Appeals?
I'm sure that they are nice people in other ways, and they have pets and family that they love. But yeah, this WDRB is not pleased with these people. I'm not pleased with these people. I don't think David Jones is. No.
Yeah. No. I'm not pleased with them either.
The legislator says that this, I'd like to know the name of the legislator, says that the keeping of the funds violates due process and other constitutional rights. But these 2 judges, they keep calling them the majority, but it's only 2 judges, ruled that Jones did not prove it was unconstitutional for the state to collect and keep monies from an innocent person. In those words. That's...
Well, I've got a constitutional argument right now.
Yeah.
Article 2 of Kentucky's Constitution says that people's rights may not be infringed, regardless of the size of the majority.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely... It even uses those words. Absolute power over the rights and property of another man exists nowhere in a free republic, even in the largest majority.
Good quote. Yeah. You remember that.
I really like the Kentucky Constitution. I'm within inches of just sitting here and reading it for the entire show. I wonder if that's why they keep saying majority. So the majority ruled that Jones did not prove... He didn't.
What do you mean he didn't prove?
He didn't
He
prove.
He didn't convince these two judges.
Yeah, these two judges are apparently hard to convince.
Right. Well, if that's not overturned, that suggests other problems higher up.
Well, yes, it does. I mean, this is and this is a mistake that that we've made too. You know, honestly, all through 2018 and 2019, whenever anybody talked about a judge's election, we were always like, oh, I don't know. Or the last one where it was Reynolds versus Goodman, like that was easy, Goodman, but we didn't get involved. We didn't do anything with it. We just knew that Reynolds was bad and Goodman was good, and that's all we thought about it. Like, these elected judges do not seem to be producing constitutional scholars. They
That's well stated.
I read something the other day that I thought was really interesting. It said all judges start, and I don't know if this is true. Maybe you know better than I do. Oh, and also Andrea Welker is going to come on as a guest one of these days, and she's actually a lawyer. So
she's a lawyer. Okay.
She can tell us too. But according to this book I read, all judges start as attorneys, and
Sure.
they want to make an example out of anybody who's foolish enough to come before them without an attorney.
Huh.
Because they start as attorneys and they go back to being attorneys.
Sounds like bias.
I don't know what to do. I don't understand the system well enough, but I mean, like, this is clearly an aberrant result. When the legislator is sitting there yelling at you what their intent was, and you're like, I can't hear him, because I think it is not, I think that nobody proved it unconstitutional to collect and keep monies from an innocent person.
Uh-huh.
Jeffrey Mando, that's a J, Jeff, not like us, other kind of Jeff. Jeffrey Mando, an attorney representing the Clark County jailer, had this to say: "We think at this point the law is clearly established to authorize this practice. We're pleased that the court validated the statutory process that allowed jails to assess, deduct, and collect booking and per diem fees from individuals that are brought into custody. These fees save taxpayer money and help offset the operation of jails." I'll take a second there to say the Clark County jailer here was not the jailer in 2013. He's a fellow named Frank Doyle who I sincerely believe is doing his absolute best in a completely impossible position.
Mm-hmm.
I think to the extent that, I think he is a good jailer. I think he's doing a good job. I just don't think it's possible to do. I think the system, as long as we have 70-odd cops driving around this town of 20,000 people looking for people to throw in jail, the jail will always be in an impossible position.
And prosecutors who want to get as many convictions as they possibly can, because that's how they get promoted.
Well, any system is set up to recognize and maximize numbers.
Huh.
You know, this is a accountable thing. We got this many arrests. We put this people away for this many years. The metrics are all set up to count this. And in any system, the individuals within that system will act to maximize their metrics,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they're measured.
Right.
A cop is measured by how many arrests they make.
Right.
A prosecutor is measured by how many convictions. A judge is measured by how quickly they can process a case.
Right.
And it turns into a machine. And Jeffrey Mando is standing up for the part of the machine that says, like, hey, we need to be able to take money from these people or they're all going to starve while they're in our custody, which is true. Attorney Greg Belsley, who represents Jones, said in an interview that he hopes the High Court and legislators will look at the issue as Combs requested. Almost every state allows inmates to be charged room and board fees. Kentucky has made millions of dollars since the law went into effect. About half of Kentucky jails use a collections agency to go after inmates who owe fees.
Right, even if they're found not guilty at trial.
Mm-hmm. Before the bill passed the Kentucky General Assembly in 2000, legislators successfully added an amendment requiring the sentencing court, or judge, to determine how much an inmate owed in jail fees after a conviction. When the bill was proposed, legislators raised concerns about inmates who couldn't afford the fees, as well as constitutional issues with seizing money from somebody who hadn't been convicted.
Mm-hmm. So how many years ago was that concern raised?
That was 2000.
Long time ago.
2000, they noticed that there was maybe a constitutional issue with seizing money from people that weren't convicted.
So from 2000 till 2020, the Kentucky Supreme Court has not issued an opinion on any of this.
Yeah.
It's like that's a problem, and it hasn't come to us yet. Well, I guess it's coming to them now.
Well, I mean, this is like these guys are advocating for brutal, barbaric economics. They have to have the money to keep the people in the jail.
Right, but violating the Constitution is not the way to solve any problem.
It seems to me
in a republic.
It seems to me that if we let half the people out of jail and just doubled the per diem for the other half, then this would take care of a lot of these problems.
Right.
But and then nobody loses their job. God help anybody who takes anybody's job away, even if your job is literally keeping people in a concrete box so they can't go to their job. It's still your job, and you need to keep your job and your pension. As a condition of moving the bill forward, legislators agreed to amend it on the Senate floor to address these concerns, adding specific language to require the sentencing court, rather than allow the county to order reimbursement to jails. Let's just cut that short because that wasn't the clearest.
Right.
They wanted specific language to let the sentencing court or the judge, rather than allow the county to order reimbursement. Okay, so they're saying, sorry.
Well, I think they're just saying as long as a judge says they can take money from innocent people, then it's okay.
But they want the judge to say it.
They want it the judge, right?
Yeah, they want the judge to say it, and the judges don't want to say it.
Not the county jailer.
Because the judges prefer to act politely puzzled that anything terrible would ever have come before them. They don't want to, the judges want to think of themselves as nice guys. The author of the bill, former Kentucky Senate President David Williams, now a judge, wonder if he was elected, previously told WDRB that he couldn't understand what authority jailers have to take any money for housing a prisoner if not found guilty. I agree with him on that.
That's right. Sometimes David Williams makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. And Ms. Combs noted in her dissent that the statutory language is clear and unambiguous on its face. A sentencing court alone is vested with jurisdiction to order payment for lodging in the county jail.
That's another extremely strong argument. I mean, so what the majority here, these two other judges, said was that they don't care about the plain language of the statute.
Yeah.
Not interested.
Yep.
Because they have some court precedent from whenever it was.
Yeah, because there's other judges that didn't care.
Because some other judges made a stupid decision. They don't have to follow the law. Well, the judges are bound to follow the law. And if they're supposed to be. Some court precedent from decades ago conflicts with the existing law as it is written, the court precedent has to go. That's what has to be dumped.
Well, clearly not, or I wouldn't be reading this article right now.
Right.
I'm
talking about
driver of the second vehicle was injured as Bernie Sanders is married to a lady named Jane. Pete Buttigieg is married to a guy named Chasen. There's a loquacity and liquidity to his use of the language that I find incredibly compelling. I have no intention of voting for him, but I enjoy the way that he dips into fiction and into these strange sort of out-of-date verbal loop-de-loops and curlicues. Things that people used to do and nobody does anymore. It's delightful. It's like
kind of a literary way of talking.
Yeah, it's like you're at a dinner party and some guy stands up and decides he's going to recite a poem. And this ties back in because when we were talking about the origins of the CIA earlier, the CIA can be viewed as a union between, or a conjunction between the American government, the Sicilian Mafia, and the Jewish Mafia. That's where it came from, and that's what it was meant to do.
Wow.
And one of the main people in the early years of the CIA, and actually the Italian liaison and the Israeli liaison, was a man named James Jesus Angleton, who was a fascinating character and a poet. He probably would have been a major writer if he hadn't gotten into the CIA. And because he went into the CIA, he became so paranoid and so terrified of everybody else that he became the CIA's chief of counterintelligence, and he became the cigar-smoking man. He's where the cigar-smoking man, or the cigarette-smoking man, came from. He would sit in his office with one lamp over his desk, with his giant bottleneck glasses, smoking cigarette after cigarette, surrounded by papers upon papers upon papers that contained the personnel dossiers of everyone in the world. And he would sit there and decide who was a spy and who wasn't, and who was a communist and who wasn't. And he was completely insane by the end. But that's what happens when you put a gun in the hand of a poet. And I think Pete Buttigieg missed his calling, and he could have been very happy as a Midwestern literary professor. And instead he's gone on to this strange path. I don't know how much this reference means to you, but Pete Buttigieg is a Coen Brothers character. Pete Buttigieg is like the Coen Brothers and Wes Anderson got together to write a part for Kevin Spacey. He's the most fictional of all the candidates, and I can't help but love that. Okay, enough about Pete Buttigieg. Let's listen to music.
I tried to be lyrical, but lyrics failed me, so I gave up poetry and ran west on I-80. The birds were watching from above as I flew on to
Support for WRFL is provided in part by Pops Resale. Pops Resale offers